Hey everybody, it's the Roast Battle League Commissioner, Pat Barker, and before we get to this week's episode, and we have a great one, I want to tell everybody who is in or around the Bay Area, if you are anywhere near Northern California, you are going to want to be at the Sacramento Punchline on August 11th. It's coming up real soon. Paige Wesley, Roast Battle Hall of Famer from LA, traveling up there to take on one of their best up-and-coming battlers, Morgan Anderson. It is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Check out verbalviolence.com. Follow us on Instagram at Roast Battle for more details, and you're not going to want to miss this one. If you're up there, you got to check this out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RBL Weekly, the show where we review the highlights of the week in the Roast Battle League. I am the RBL Commissioner. My name is Pat Barker, and I'm joined by a different co-host this week. If you were with us last week, you saw Sarah Keller. She will be my normal co-host. She was otherwise occupied this week, so who better to fill in than a legend, a Hall of Fame roast battler, one of my toughest opponents, Paige Wesley. How's it going, Paige?
Thank you. I killed Sarah, Highlander style, because there can be only one host. So what's up?
I love that. Since she's not here, I will say I already think you're a better co-host than she is.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
You are
that.
crushing it right now.
Awesome.
No, who better to have than somebody who's been in the trenches, who's done 30-some battles at this point.
Yeah.
Faced all different kinds of opponents, and we're going to be checking out footage from all over the world today. Are you excited?
I'm super excited. I'm really excited, especially to see the international ones. It's going to be great.
We have, after last week, we did not feature any international battles. This week, we've got something that I think you're really going to enjoy. But first, we will start stateside. Last week's winner, the first city to post a #1 overall battle, comes in at number 5 this week. Chicago, who has been crushing it. They make the list again this week. We're going to be checking out a recent battle of theirs. This is Jessica Misra versus Tito Sid.
Nice. I'm excited. Let's watch it.
Let's check it out.
Okay, Tito says he's liberal, but those fingerless gloves scream, I don't vote.
I do. Y'all don't like how I vote. Fuck y'all.
Tito's Instagram bio says that he's a passionate person, being human, who loves traveling the world. His Instagram bio is a white woman's dating profile. He's a white woman trapped in a drug dealer's outfit.
Jessica dresses like every day is laundry day. In fact, you look like a free couch on Facebook Marketplace.
Tito dresses... Tito dresses like an aspiring DJ.
Jessica likes to wear a lot of sweaters and blazers and loose t-shirts. In fact, her comedy matches her style because she's a nobody with no body.
Tito's a lot like Tito's vodka. College girls think it's good because they don't know better.
Give it up for him, everybody. Come on.
Wow, so we kick off the countdown this week with another heater from Chicago.
Amazing.
And what I love about this is every week I feel like we're introduced to new people that we haven't seen before, different styles. What were your thoughts on that fight?
Out the gate, and this is a personal pet peeve, phones on the stage. I hate it. If you want to do, if you're a roast battler and you want to do one thing to make you look amazing, don't have your phone. Like, it's an instant upgrade. That said, I think Jessica really nailed something that Tito struggled with. And for Tito, it was making jokes about appearance, but also making slut jokes and having them be incongruous. So if you're going to hit the slut angle, you can't then turn around and call somebody frumpy, because the implication is that they then wouldn't be laid because they look like a couch on the sidewalk.
Right.
So pick a lane. Whereas she stayed in that lane. He looks like a, aspiring DJ. He's wearing a drug dealer's outfit. You've got a noun after his name in your phone. Bus.
Yeah.
She pigeonholed him so perfectly, and he was a little more all over the place. And you do want to be diverse in your joke writing, but you have to be diverse and paint a picture of someone that the audience can get behind, because then you can build on it. And if you're inconsistent, it confuses the audience a little bit, at least in my experience.
I think that's true. I will say he kind of did his part as a target by painting the picture before she even had to say anything.
Yep.
Like when you look up there and there's a guy with fingerless gloves on.
Oh my Lord, why is he wearing fingerless gloves?
And, the Big J Okerson influence continues to this day.
Big J pulls it off, and he's the last person to pull off fingerless gloves since racing in the 1940s. Like, no one should
What about
be wearing...
Dice?
I don't like about
Dice pulled him
either. Dice, sure, but he also had the jacket. Like, if you're gonna go fingerless gloves, you got to go whole hog. You can't go fingerless gloves and then Havana shirt. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Let me ask you this, because I agree with everything you said from a joke writing perspective.
Sure.
And bonus points for use of the word incongruous.
Oh, thank you.
I did not expect to hear that on the podcast. What about from a presentation standpoint in terms of likability? Because the thing that jumped out at me about Tito is that he was very loud.
Yes.
Which contrasted with her delivery, where she was like way more laid back. She came across as more likable. Mm-hmm. But I think for Tito, there's something to the effect of he's almost like a character.
Yes.
You come up a little bit in costume, and we see that a little bit in LA with one of our favorites, Los Digits.
Yes.
Who very much is playing a character. I'm not sure if he's aware of it, but he is. So when he is a little more aggressive towards women, sometimes it's a little more palatable because you feel like, oh, that's not really him. He's kind of playing a character. He kind of walked that line, Tito did,
He walked that line. I feel like he didn't go far enough into being a character to make people accept it. I think a perfect example of this is someone I think we're going to see later. I don't know if I can spoil that. But Lou Miziano, who leans full into a character and will say horrifying things that just walking around in regular clothes as a regular guy, the audience would turn on you immediately.
Yeah.
And you really have to kind of walk that line. And you also have to be, one of the biggest tools in your arsenal roasting is knowing who you are and knowing what the audience is going to think of you right off the bat. Because that gives you some insight into what kind of jokes people are going to tell about you, but also ways that you can challenge those jokes. Now, Jessica, thank you. Jessica almost she almost messed up her own likability at one point when she disagreed with his slut jokes. Because that is always a challenge. If somebody says something about you, you've got a couple options. You can disagree with it, but you better have a joke to come back about it.
Yeah, just fact-checking the jokes oftentimes kills the room.
It does. You're almost better off yes-anding a joke than fact-checking it. And I think in part she was noticing the incongruity of his jokes and was reacting to that. But if I were her, I would have not addressed it.
Yeah, but otherwise, look, I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point.
Oh, for
otherwise, pretty much a flawless performance from her.
Fantastic.
I said it last week, I continue to be impressed by Chicago with the joke writing. Of course, last week we watched Grace Leishman, the champion over there. And then today, between these two, great way to kick off this week's countdown. And now we're going to move west. And this is going to be the debut clip for the first time from Roast Battle Bay Area, which happens right around your hometown.
Right
You're
around
a Bay Area product.
I'm a Bay Area native, yeah.
The Bay Area, they run in a bunch of different venues, primarily out of Sacramento. This was their first event in San Francisco at Cobb's Comedy Club, and we did Bay Area versus LA Part 2. Now, a couple months ago, they sent down some of their best from the Bay down to the Comedy Store, and they actually edged us out 3-2.
They cleaned up when they came to LA.
That might be strong.
I mean,
they did well.
Sure.
But we had to get revenge. So we went back up. I was actually judging this one, very fun show, but the battle we are going to highlight had something that we've never seen, at least to this degree before. I know you have yet to see it.
I've yet to see it. I got to proof the jokes before it happened, which, peek behind the curtain, if you're roast battling regularly, you have people that you trust to like send your jokes to and be like, do these sound good? And I got these jokes ahead of time and was very upset that I couldn't see the battle after reading those jokes. So I'm actually really excited to see it now.
This was kind of magic. This is LA's Toby Mirashanu, former Belly Room champion, heading up to the Bay, heading up to San Francisco to take on one of their best, Logan Farr. Let's check it out.
One more time for Logan and Toby!
You look like you work at an artisanal meth lab.
Thank you, Britain's favorite spy on autism powers. Toby's so proud his wife is double vaxxed and boosted. That's not surprising. This is not the first time he's let 3 separate men stick it in her.
Logan used to have a body for football, and now he has a body for foosball. But hold on. I have a little story to tell. Logan loves conspiracy theories, and honestly, I've never been one for them, you know? But sometimes I think maybe I'm not open-minded enough. But then as he started telling me a story about his accident, something seemed off a little bit. This is what happened, according to the official narrative. Logan gets home from a deployment. He wanders off from a bar, trips on train tracks, knocks himself unconscious, like you do. Just as his feet are laying on the track, no one notices that he has wandered off until a train comes over and severs his feet clearly off. And Logan remembers absolutely nothing about the entire day.
Oh, shit.
Even if you Google it on his podcast, he will say, no one knows exactly what happened that day. So I had to know more. I decided to do what Logan would do, and I did my own research. I started Googling. But it was weird. You would think that a small town having an accident, like a freight train running over someone and severing the feet, would make a local newspaper. But there were no results. Almost as if it had been scrubbed from the internet. But that's neither here nor there. Until I decided to do the next step and follow the money. Logan is a semi-professional comedian and jiu-jitsu athlete. Not very lucrative occupations in general. Yet Logan has been able to secure sponsorships. He does seminar coaching. He takes donations. He even has it be his entire brand that he is a jiu-jitsu fighter with no feet. So, interesting. Okay. But, you know, still, I'm not jumping into conclusions. I'm not convinced. Then I noticed something else. This is the map of where Logan's accident happened. And you'll notice that it has a direct train line to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Oh, who lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico? You remember the island, but you forgot he also has a ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Right? And you might remember his plane, the Lolita Express. Express, weird name for a plane, logical name for a train. Express train.
Oh my God.
So, this is just a summary of what we've covered so far. And maybe you're thinking, this doesn't make any sense. Is Logan really part of some perverse, fucked up sex cult? Like, he's not even Jeffrey Epstein's type. Or is he? This was taken backstage earlier.
Oh my God, dude.
So you'll notice that if you go on his Instagram page, you can see he's an aspiring model. He does nude photos. You can see him holding his foot.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing you can't see of his is, of course, his feet. His feet, the most lucrative thing that you can sell on the internet. All of the money. So what am I saying? Am I saying that, Logan, having gotten out of the military, few career options, a dream of doing semi-pro jiu-jitsu and comedy, but no real revenue source, dreams of being a nude model, and he gets an offer.
So ridiculous, yeah.
To sever his feet and give them to a sick, fucked up billionaire. Is there a billionaire like that? Connect the dots, people. I'm not saying that he sold his feet to Jeffrey Epstein so that Jeffrey Epstein could reach the most perverse levels and, jerk off on his feet as he took them out of the freezer or whatever. I'm just asking questions. But this is not over. Follow youtube.com/LoganFry. And tweet at me at #ShoeAndOn. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
Dude, that was fucking awesome.
Wow.
So you might have seen me at the end of the judging table. I was a couple Coronas deep, and that connected with me like few jokes I've ever heard. Wow. I mean, one of the things I love about the show, we see different styles, we see different approaches. That is something, and we've seen things sort of in that vein before, the longer joke, multiple punchlines, but maybe never quite to that degree.
No, and Toby did send me this ahead of time to be like, I'm thinking of doing a slide presentation. And if you are not familiar with Toby's work, Toby never deviates.
No, never.
Toby just stays in the pocket and tells jokes and is almost unbeatable that way because he's such an amazing joke writer. And for him to think about branching out in this way was very out of character, and it's risky because everyone gets tired of just telling jokes and wants to do something different, and everyone entertains the idea, I think, from time to time. I'd never heard that from Toby. And so what I told him when he sent it to me was, I understand that this could be a risk and it could go badly, but I need you to do this.
Yeah.
I've never seen you doing this. Please do this. So I was so happy to see that he did it and that it went as well as it did. Shoeing on is an amazing, amazing hashtag. It was perfect going against a guy who made a shocking amount of Holocaust jokes for someone who probably doesn't think it happened. So perfect. It was the perfect time and place for that joke, which I think is the fine line you have to walk when you take a risk like that.
Well, and see, that's kind of what I wanted to get into. You alluded to it a minute ago when you said something to the effect of, it's not something he usually does, and we all entertain these thoughts. What I found as I go over the 40 battle mark is you get bored.
Yeah.
And boredom necessitates risks.
Yes.
Because you're like, if I just keep getting up there and doing this thing that I know works.
Right.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
So after a while, you start writing for yourself. You start writing to challenge yourself. Whereas somebody like Logan strikes me as very much like I was my first few battles, which is you're not writing with the intention of how can I challenge myself? How can I say something that I find funny?
Right.
How will I go into a roast and make the audience either laugh or perhaps worse, gasp?
I couldn't believe that he did, for the amount of times he called Toby autistic and then mentioned the vaccine and didn't make a vaccine autism joke. It's
real
right
missed
there.
opportunity.
Real
for
missed
sure,
opportunity.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's the difference in the approach where you're newer and you're like, what is a good roast joke?
Right. And to be honest, he should have gone with Toby's wife is double vaxxed and boosted, and Toby has had 17,000 vaccines, some crazy number to emphasize the autism. But he doesn't have 30 battles under his belt.
Sure.
That's the difference. Toby has battled almost probably more than anyone.
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
more than me.
I will say on the car ride to the venue, because we rented a van or an SUV, and we're heading over, and I'm in the front. I'm driving, and Toby is right next to me, and I see him running his jokes, just silently with different hand motions. And
Try and look human.
Right, but no, because he's running through this entire presentation, but I didn't know that. I'm used to Toby having these one-liners,
right?
And it almost seemed like a guy who's new to rapping, and he's like perfecting his like rap hands.
Mom's spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm gonna do this here, and then I'm gonna go over the top for this one.
Right.
And I even asked him, I was like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
Like, you practicing specific hand motions for like one-liner jokes, and I had no idea what we were in for. So enormous risk. Ended up paying off. Toby took the battle. It's not the last we'll see of Logan Farr. He is heading back down to LA, and hopefully, as he gets more battles under his belt, he'll start to realize that the funniest possible thing you could do is write stuff that you find funny.
Yeah.
Not try to cater to the roast battle crowd, because we've all been there.
We've all been there.
It's something that you definitely learn.
There's also an element of, you can take risks in a lot of different ways in a roast battle. I think one that I've been exploring recently is just wearing the craziest shit that I want to wear. I don't care if it's going to make it easier for people to tell jokes.
Yep.
If I'm happy in it, if I'm loving being in that moment, looking that way. Like, I wore earrings to the last battle that said thick bitch.
Yeah.
Because I loved them.
Right.
And that just made it more fun. And when I'm having fun, battles are better. And I think that's true of almost everyone. It's like when you lean into who you are and have fun with it and tell jokes that you love, it only elevates battles.
You know, this is usually the part where I look for a segue into introducing our next battle. You have set it up for me better than I possibly could. You want to talk about two people who are comfortable in their own skin, who are owning who they are. That's what we're about to see. We're going to head down the 5 into LA. This is a battle from the Belly Room this past week. I know you haven't seen it. You're very excited.
I haven't seen it. I'm very excited.
This is, I believe, the first time we've ever done this, an all drag queen battle.
See, here's the thing. I think we may have done it in the past, but I don't remember. I know we've had drag queens battling people out of drag. I don't know if we've ever had drag on drag violence.
I think this is the first drag on drag violence that we have ever had. And this one got heated in a hurry. This is Ponderosa Flabbergast versus Gigi DeBussy. Great names.
Great names.
I don't even have anything else. Let's just watch this.
Speaking of man, we have Jamar Neighbors and his gap tube.
Oh, what? Okay, hold on, Gold Dust from WWE.
That's a compliment. I'll take that.
Hell yeah,
Make some noise for flabbergastric bypass. Flabbergast got kicked out of high school for eating the lunch, lady. You are what you eat.
You know, I may be fat, but the only thing thinner than Gigi DeBussy's waistline is her T-cell count.
Thank you, Jabba the slut. Bitch, why you built like an above-ground pool?
Gigi and I are both cross-dressers. I'm a man dressed as a woman. She's Malibu's most wanted dressed as Caitlyn Jenner.
Thank you, John Goodman died cramming you into that outfit.
Wow. I'm glad to see another one. That was badass. I love this shit.
So Ponderosa Flabbergast.
Yes.
Gigi DeBussy.
Yes.
I'm going to be very honest up front here. I am not familiar with drag culture. I believe that you are.
Very. Yes. Yes.
Take it away.
Okay, so this battle is the perfect example of the ways in which drag culture and roast battle have a Venn diagram that converges in the middle and ways that they don't. Because if you go to a drag show, and specifically like a drag brunch or even a drag roast, because they do have drag roasts, you will see that it is a rowdy crowd, it's a drunk crowd, and as a performer on stage, you don't survive unless you have optimal crowd work skills. Like, you have to be a crowd work beast to survive a drag race show, or just drag show, not just drag race. But now on the flip side, a lot of people think that that's what roast battle is, but roast battle is actually a blending of writing good jokes ahead of time and having a joke writing skill set, and then blending that with being in the moment and being quick enough in the moment to seize rebuttals where you can if you haven't already pre-written them. And I think that's why when we look at this battle, in the beginning, tackling Rich as one of the judges, she gains ground because he is not ready for how fast she is going to be. But then when we get to the actual battle, the joke writing, the actual written jokes are not as dynamic as some of the crowd work jokes.
Yeah.
But I would say that's one of those skill sets where the longer you battle and the more you battle, you'd build that second skill and then you'd be fucking unstoppable. So it's always tricky when you see people who come to roast battle with a great crowd work skill set, and it's always a question as to whether or not they're going to build out their joke writing on top of that to really become a fucking powerhouse.
For sure, and there were glimpses of the joke writing. You look like an above ground pool is one of the funniest observations I've ever heard.
That is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. However, I will say Ponderosa's, I think it's her second joke, doesn't get the respect it deserves in that room. It's a very well-written joke. It's a very funny joke where she says the only thing thinner than her waistline is her T-cell count.
Yes.
Which is implying that she's HIV positive. But that's a room that maybe isn't as familiar and doesn't understand. Whereas if you told that at a drag roast, that would have fucking destroyed.
Well, it kind of touches on a few things we've talked about before, likability and how vicious your jokes get. I mean, we saw it in the last battle with the Holocaust references when Gigi at that point has established herself as extraordinarily likable. So when you come off with a vicious joke like a T-cell count, maybe it doesn't hit the way it would have had Gigi not stolen the room. Now let's talk about that strategic decision first. When it comes to fucking with the judges, what is your stance? Because I've always been a guy, when I am not telling my roast jokes, I hand the microphone to the host. I get the hell out of the way. I don't like going back and forth. It hurts me more than it helps. What are your thoughts on it?
It is risky. And there's a couple ways you can play it, where you can go after a judge the way that Gigi did. And if you do it, if you manage to get the upper hand on that judge, it only helps you. That will win you a battle, even if you lose the battle after doing it. Or conversely, you could lose a battle and then take a judge down and win people back over.
Sure.
I think of the classic Doug versus Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
Like, that is unreal. The crowd reaction to it is, I mean, the belly room shook.
Yeah.
So, like, it has advantages if you choose to do it. I shy away from it often as well. Usually what I will choose to do is yes and the judges and agree with them even when they say mean things. Because then it does boost your likability because people are like, oh, they can laugh at themselves. If you have a joke that you can like shoehorn in there, you can. But also, it's also not a bad idea to not do it, especially if you've won a battle. Like, if you have decisively won, just stay quiet and take the win.
There is a point, if you're up by 17 and there's 3 minutes left, you run the football.
Yes.
You kill the clock. You do not do anything risky or dumb.
Yeah.
If your goal is to win the battle. Some people don't give a fuck about that. Their goal is to just get as many jokes in as possible at the expense of whoever's in the room. So
yeah.
I see it from both angles. And if you're new to roast battle, what Paige is alluding to is that when Tony Hinchcliffe lived in LA, he was a very frequent judge on our show, and also very frequent was the amount of times that comedians dunked on Tony, and it worked every time.
Every time.
So it helps if you are a judge that is very unlikable. Shout out to Rich Voss.
Yeah.
Not my opinion, just clearly the opinion of the crowd. But what an entertaining battle! What a remarkable departure from what we usually get in roast battle, over the top, theatrical. But now let's rein it in.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the roots of roast battle: boring white guys. It's what the show was founded on. It's what the show, we will forever be the cornerstone of the show.
I like that we were like, we founded it on boring white guys, and everyone who's done the dozens is like, how dare you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm talking about this very specific offshoot of the dozens, which clearly we did not originate the art of insulting one another. Please don't cancel me. I'm talking about this show. Boring white guys, we kind of ran the town for a little bit. And over across the pond, as they say, we are still in high demand. Boring white guys are still killing it over there.
Yep. Which
brings us to the number 2 battle this week. This is the first appearance from our London division. This was an outstanding battle that we saw from England recently between Joe Bingham and Ken Grinnell. I didn't know either of these gentlemen, but I watched the battle earlier today. I was very impressed. It's going to be your first time seeing it.
It's my first time, and those are some of the whitest names I've ever heard. From a country that's just been breeding chins out of people for hundreds of years.
Joe versus Ken, I think you're going to like it. Let's take a look at it.
Nice.
So Joe's an only child, which is weird because he's come dressed in his little brother's jeans.
Ken has a joke in his set about being half Irish, half Jamaican, but turned out looking Chinese. Yeah. I reckon in hindsight his dad wishes his mum was Chinese because then she might have backed the abortion that he suggested.
Yes, it's true. So my dad, it's true. My dad had a lot of kids, but he still made the effort. Whereas Joe is an only child, and his dad still left when he was a kid. Also, he had a partner who left him and married a woman. That's true. This roast battle is the longest anyone's been in Joe's life.
Obviously, I was just joking about the abortion thing. As Ken mentioned, his dad has 18 kids, which means that when Ken refers to other people as bro in London, he's just hedging his bets.
You haven't seen your dad in all these. He could have 18 kids as well. You don't know, Joe.
Who's your daddy? One of Ken's other facts was that he used to box. It doesn't look like it, so I assume what he meant is that his dad used to hotbox the car while he was in the bed.
I bet you do a lot of imagining what dads do.
Ken versus Joe, I really enjoyed that one.
Wow. Vicious in the UK.
A lot of dad talk.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, watching that battle, because I love sort of the strategy of these things, right? And I think we've all kind of been there. Certainly you've been on the receiving end of it.
Oh,
where
absolutely.
An opponent has 5 jokes, and they pick one topic,
one lane,
and they stick there. And I have seen it work, and I have seen it not work, and that was one of the most effective ways I've seen it done.
Yes, that's one of the ways I've seen it actually work. Another way, I don't know if you've shown this battle on this show, but Ashley Johnson versus Doug Fager at Madame Siam was another one that kind of was in that same lane. But I think it's really interesting to bring this battle up because I feel like you and I were on opposite ends of this at South by Southwest this past year.
That's a very astute observation.
Yeah.
Tito was. Go ahead. Explain.
Sure. So you had a battle the day before mine where your opponent chose to make 5 jokes in a row about a miscarriage that you and your wife experienced.
Yes, correct.
And you similarly had planned a similar strategy where you had made 5 Asian jokes in a row, and the crowd chose one lane.
They sure did, and it wasn't the one I was driving in.
It was not that one, which is always interesting because you never know where a crowd's going to be, and it's always tough when a crowd just definitively picks somebody and goes in that direction.
It's bizarre. Look, I don't want to bring up my own stuff on the podcast too often because we're focused on these guys, but it is an interesting juxtaposition. In that case, and the way I justified it to myself, because as a writer, I hold myself to a standard as well, and I'm like, my opponent was Vietnamese.
Right.
And I thought it would be a funny angle. And
you did have 5 different Asian jokes.
If I was as over the top ignorant as possible.
Right.
To the point where the first joke he's Korean.
Right.
And then I acknowledge he's actually Vietnamese, but I don't care. And then next joke he's Chinese. And then he's from Taiwan.
Yeah.
I thought that was so silly that there's no possible way that they could have taken it seriously and seen hate in my heart, but they did.
They did. That was not a silly crowd.
They thought that it was, but here's if in a nutshell, okay, I can accept that.
Yeah.
This is a kind of crowd that it does not appreciate, mean.
Right.
And they perceived what I was doing as mean. But
then they didn't think the miscarriage jokes were mean?
He did 5 miscarriage jokes, and they practically carried him out on their shoulders like Don Shula when he won the fucking Super. It was wild.
The last one got a standing ovation, if I remember correctly.
And I was getting, literally booed.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for sure, that is a risk you run when you hit one note definitively. And with the miscarriage thing, I've battled other people who have done the same thing, and it has not been as effective.
Yeah, Eli Sayers, I think, notably on TV, where it was considerably less effective.
Yeah.
Now, the very next night at South by, I went up against Dan Nolan, who told 5 different jokes about my tits, which made me laugh hysterically and worked for 3 jokes.
Yeah.
Like, you really run the risk of how long is the audience going to go along with you. Mm-hmm. And there is a breaking point where even if the jokes are good, you may lose them along the way because they want variety. And that's a risk you run whenever you plan a ton of jokes about one thing. In my battle experience, there have been many, many people who have gone 5 fat jokes in a row and lost because of it. So it really depends on who your opponent is. If you think you can craft jokes like that.
Sure.
I think one of the most successful was Nicole Buchanan versus Greg Roquet, where she did 5 jokes in a row without talking about his wheelchair. But every single joke was a misdirection where you were like, she's going to mention the wheelchair. And then she didn't for 5 straight jokes, and it crushed. It destroyed.
Now, look, when you come up with a theme like that, obviously there's skill involved. All this strategy, there is skill involved. Sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's also a little bit of luck. I want to pull it back to this battle, and I want to talk about how Ken intended to go in with nothing but father jokes.
Right.
And then Joe had a very funny joke about boxing and his dad hotboxing in the car, and he ended up unknowingly
on the flip side
walking directly into the trap that Ken had laid.
Yes.
And Ken has done all these jokes about how you have no father, and then you do a joke involving his father. It is almost like you're on a breakaway and all the defenders fall down and you just have the end zone in front of you. And then Ken, you saw the wheels turning, and he came up with, I'll bet you spend a lot of time wondering what fathers do.
Yep.
Just chef's kiss to be in the moment.
Beautiful.
And to add that on to what you're already doing. Just a masterclass in writing, roasting, being in the moment, having those rebuttals ready to go. A very strong debut effort from London here on RBL Weekly. But it's time for the number 1 battle. This is our second episode. Last week, Chicago took home the top spot. This week, we travel east. We head to the Mecca. We head to New York City. They have been putting on roast battles almost as long as we have in LA.
Yeah.
Their newest iteration of roast battle runs bi-weekly at the New York Comedy Club, and the main event over this past week featured one of their most experienced battlers going up against one of LA's heroes from the past.
Yeah.
Lou Miziano, originally from the East Coast, moved out to LA, lived here for a few years, made quite a name for himself in the belly room. Now he's back on the East Coast. This was his New York debut. And he found out very quickly it's kind of a different audience than you have here in LA.
Yeah, it's a different audience. I've beat Lou twice in overtime both times. And so he is a challenging, talented battler, but what works in one place doesn't always work in others.
Can I just make a note that when you're talking about somebody you've beaten, you're very quick to include their name, but when you were talking about somebody who beat you, it was just an unnamed opponent.
I think it was only because I had name dropped the person who beat me like 4 times already.
Fair enough. And if you were to name drop everybody who's beaten you, we just don't have that kind of time.
We don't have that kind of
time. Without further ado, let's get into the number 1 battle. This is from New York City. This is Dan Wicks versus Lou Miziano. Let's check it out.
All right, so Lou dropped out of Penn State because he was disgusted by Jerry Sandusky getting fired.
Dan has Tourette's and loves Nirvana, which is why I call him Blurt Cobain.
Yeah, I have Tourette's, but usually when Lou's battling a shaking person, he's shoving a woman in his trunk.
Dan, you nerdy fucking nobody. Dan looks like he's apologized to an anime girl body pillow for raising his voice.
All right, I'm gonna need you guys to laugh a little harder for Lou, because if I beat him by too much, his dad's gonna buy the club and shut it down.
finally, Dan, you are disfigured, disabled, and decrepit. I would compare you to an aborted fetus, but people actually want those.
Lou goes on a crazy amount of Tinder dates. Yes. He only swipes left when slitting her throat.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was our number one battle of the week. And I got to tell you, when I watched it, I was so pleasantly surprised because after it happened, Lou, who, full disclosure, I'm friends with, friends with, from our times out in LA, he texted me and he said, they hated me. It was the worst. They ripped up my headshot. He told me that, and we saw it in the video. And then I asked him, I said, did they boo you? Was it silence? And he said it was everything. And it just goes to show sometimes when you're in the moment, you create this scenario in your head. And I've done it where you're like, it's awful. And then you go back and you watch it. And I watched today. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
He did great. Did they care for the antics? They did not.
They did not. And I mean, it all depends on the battle. Like if you look at like Toby's battle earlier in the show, that's full antics, and it's not what Toby normally does, but it definitely worked. And it's banking on that risk and seeing that it's the right antics for the show.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, those are antics that Lou used to do in LA all the time. And I think some of the reason why they worked in LA so well is they kind of parody some of the douchebags in LA.
Sure.
And I think that lends itself to that belly room feel a little bit. And he's playing the heel and people know him for that. But in New York, they don't know him for that. They don't necessarily vibe with the character. I think if he was to go back and battle again in New York, he's probably not going to do any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And playing the heel is a weird concept in roast battle. The idea of home and away teams.
Yeah.
When they introduce you, if you're out of town and they're like, oh, this guy's the best guy from LA.
Yeah.
And I think immediately it puts a crowd bias against you. Now, it's not like a sport where you can go, if I'm playing basketball and I'm the road team, I could put the ball in the hoop and the crowd cannot affect me. Right. They can wave their hands on free throws or whatever, but if I shoot the ball, it's still worth 2 points.
Yeah.
Right? If you are in a sport where it is determined by audience reaction, having the crowd turn on you can be a death knell. And that's why when I asked Lou, because they do a ton of jokes in New York, I said, did you have to sit in it the whole time? And he said, yeah. And then I watched the battle and I realized that he dug himself a hole, but his joke writing is strong enough.
It dug him back out.
That he was able to get out of the hole.
Yeah.
And in his mind, he was still in it the entire time, but that was a sensational battle. They both had a lot of big hits across the board.
Yeah, and I do think that home team advantage is really interesting to talk about with roast battle, because if you are, like I've had the privilege to travel a lot with roast battle, and it's hit or miss. And it's because, you know, people want to root for their home person. So like if somebody announces that like this is our guy versus some asshole from out of town, there's gonna be a bias, and in some of those cases you have to be phenomenal to overcome it.
Yeah.
And I think, to Lou's credit, he does dig himself out of that hole. That Make-A-Wish Foundation joke.
Oh, incredible.
Unparalleled. That's so fucking funny. And I think in this case, the length of the battle, the amount of jokes they had to do, because I think it was 13 total.
Yeah, we've edited it down. What you guys just saw was definitely edited down.
It hurts both of them.
Sure.
In a way, because it hurts Dan a little bit in that second round of jokes. And at a certain point, there's only so many things you can hit. There's only so many topics you can hit and really write a stellar joke about it. And I would have loved to see this as a 5-joke, just straight through heavy hitters only battle.
Well, to pull back the curtain, we just watched the full battle here, which is 3 rounds.
Yeah.
13 total jokes. What you're describing, a 5-joke battle, you're going to see it when this podcast comes out.
That's basically what they saw.
That's what we're cutting it down to.
Right.
And I think the highs that they reached in this battle were exceptional. Great joke writing across the board from both of them. Dan is a guy who's battled out here in LA. I did want to touch on one quick thing before we leave, and we kind of beat around the bush, but New York and LA have a very different style. And I could tell you from having battled in New York and that scene having existed for as long as it has.
Yeah.
Because some of these other scenes we're just learning. Chicago, Austin. But New York always had this perception of the LA battlers as not joke writers and more theatrical. and over the top. And they always kind of resented that. And I know when I went out there with Keith Carey and Alex Hooper, Keith and I got the respect because we were just doing jokes.
And Alex is theatrical. That's who he is.
Traditionally more theatrical. He tried to tone it down, but the crowd decided immediately that they did not like him. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's a totally fair way that LA has been pigeonholed by New York, but certainly Lou fell into that trap.
Yeah, Lou definitely fell into that trap. I also think there's a difference even in the joke writing between LA and New York, and not in a way that one is better than the other, but I think that LA really thrives on short jokes. Like nailing it. Like, we've seen a couple people take risks in this show of longer jokes, multiple punchlines, but most of the time in LA, it's quick. It's you look like X. You look like an above ground pool.
Yeah.
You know? It's those fast hits. And I think in part, some of that comes from LA being so close to the TV show for a long time. Because the TV show in the industry is always cutting for the soundbite. What's going to make the commercial for the TV show? It's you look like an above ground pool, not you are this and therefore this and that. That's too long for a commercial. So your LA people are going to hit fast and hard as short as they can. Whereas in New York, they are really going to take the time. They have a history of kind of more Friars Club roasts where you have more time.
Yeah.
You can expand those jokes a little bit more. And so it makes for a longer show, more jokes and longer jokes, but some of those jokes are crafted extremely well. And so I don't necessarily think there's merit to one over the other. I just think it's a very interesting difference to observe between the two.
I agree. One thing I don't do on this show is try to, be funny. We're not going for jokes here. We're breaking it down. But if nobody has told Dan that he looks and sounds exactly like the dude from Wedding Crashers.
Oh, the one with the painting?
Yeah, I made
it's
you a painting.
Sexual and violent. Yes.
Yeah.
It was a gift.
He has the same haircut and everything.
And the eyes and the hunch.
Hunched over.
He's got the hunch.
Yeah. So sort of.
I know.
It was a great. I actually think it was a great styles make fights, and I think that these two guys worked really well together.
Yeah.
That's why they were the #1 battle of the week. We now have Chicago at the top of the leaderboard, along with New York. Got to tell you, another week we're doing this show. Another week we don't have LA at the top. We have to step our game up.
I mean, that's fair. I haven't battled in a while. Maybe I got to come back.
You have to come back just so we can be #1 one of these weeks. Shout out to the drag queens. They did great, but nothing could compare this week to Dan versus Lou. Congratulations to them for being the #1 battle. And Paige, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This was a lot of fun. You are, in my opinion, one of the greatest ambassadors for the sport.
Thank you.
You are one of, when we came back from COVID, you have had nothing but dynamite battles, and you have traveled. You've been all over.
Yeah.
You battled in Austin. You're going to be battling, I believe, in a few months up in the Bay Area, your hometown. So no matter what RBL city you're in, keep an eye out for Paige Wesley. She's probably going to be there and probably going to be kicking ass.
Yeah, Tokyo and London, 2023. I'm coming for you.
I love it.
Yeah.
She'll fuck you guys up. Tokyo, it's Godzilla Part 2. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week on RBL Weekly.
All right. Cool.